Super Mario 64 is a game that revolutionized the gaming landscape. It is the game that made me fall in love with gaming. It is undoubtedly a masterpiece. It is also unfortunately getting old. This year, 2023, the game will turn 27 years old. And it shows. When comparing it to modern games, it can look pretty rough at times. During the past 27 years, 3D games have been refined to such a point that it's starting to make Mario 64 look ancient. And when players who are too young to have grown up with the game play it now, they see a game that fails to live up to modern standards. At no point was this more evident than when Super Mario 3D All-Stars released in 2020. At the time, it seemed like most of the discussion around the game was how Mario 64 didn't hold up. People loved Super Mario Galaxy and even Sunshine to an extent, but for some reason, Mario 64 didn't receive that same kind of love. It was actually adamantly disliked by a lot of people, and as someone who loves the game, I needed to know why. So I did some research and came away with 3 main reasons. The camera is bad, the controls are a bit janky, and the boot out system pads out the game. And now that I have my reasons, I wanted to put them to the test. So join me now to see if the haters are right, or if all these complaints are just complete bogus. So the first complaint I decided to look at was the boot out system and how it pads out the game. Every time you collect a star in Mario 64, you are booted back outside the painting, and have to pick a new mission to get back inside the world. This is in direct contrast to a game like Mario Odyssey, which instead of booting you out when you collect a moon, pauses the game for a quick second and allows you to keep on exploring. This prevents the player from having to backtrack through the same section of the stage over and over again, which Mario 64 is unfortunately notorious for, especially when it comes to stages like Dire Docks. To prove this, I timed how long it would take to beat the stage the normal way, getting booted out after every star, and the Odyssey way, which is without the boot out system. If you complete Dire Dots the normal way, you end up playing it a little something like this. Jump in, swim through this tunnel, get the star in the sub, get booted out. Jump back in, get the star in the chest, get booted out. Jump in again, swim back to this tunnel, collect 8 red coins, get booted out. Get back in, swim through this tunnel a 3rd time, get the star in the jet stream, get booted out. Jump back in, get the manta ray star, get booted out. And finally, swim through this tunnel a 4th time and get this star with the invisible cap, get booted out. Now, let's look how this level could be done without the boot out system. Jump in, grab the star in the chest, get the manta ray star, swim through the tunnel, get the star in the jet stream, get the cap star, get the star on top of the sub, and then do the 8 red coins. Done. It seems a lot faster, right? Well, that's because it is. Doing Dire Docks the intended way takes 14 minutes and 30 seconds to complete. Doing it the Mario Odyssey way takes 9 minutes and 21 seconds. That's more than 5 minutes faster than the intended way. So that means roughly a third of the total playtime in a regular run is spent getting booted out and backtracking through the level. Getting booted out alone accounts for 1 minute and 15 seconds of this. Now, this is only one level in the game and is probably the most egregious example of it. If I had unlimited time, I would do this for every level in the game just to be thorough. But unfortunately, I do not. So Dire Dots will have to do, and based off Dire Dots alone, I would call this criticism valid. So let's now look at one of the more divisive aspects of Super Mario 64, the controls. Mario 64 was Nintendo's first crack at 3D gaming. In fact, it was one of the first 3D games period. The game is revolutionary for a reason. Nobody had really done 3D movement in a game like this before. So to think they would get the controls perfect on the first go around is probably a little unreasonable. That being said, it unfortunately doesn't matter in 2023. When someone picks up a game these days, they expect it to control like a modern game. And the truth is, Mario 64 doesn't. To find out exactly why, I compared the controls in Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Galaxy, and Mario Odyssey. I wanted to find out exactly what it was about Mario 64 that made people think it controlled worse than modern Mario games. And after doing some testing, I think I found some solid reasons. The first one is how Mario turns in Mario 64. In the modern games, when Mario turns around, he does a quick slide and changes direction in place. This is true for Sunshine, Galaxy, and Odyssey. However, when Mario turns around in Mario 64, he sometimes does this little semicircle instead of coming straight back. It almost makes it look like the player is doing this motion with the joystick, but this occurs when the joystick is pushed forward and pushed straight back. So, basically Mario is doing an extra motion that is not a direct input from the player, and it can make movement feel a little frustrating. It especially becomes a problem when you are facing the edge of a platform and simply want to turn around. But instead of turning around in place, Mario will sometimes do this semicircle motion, which can cause you to fall off the edge unexpectedly. And in a game that has more than its fair share of bottomless pits, this can become a problem. Something else I noticed about the controls was the lack of any kind of safety net for missed jumps. If you screw up in Mario Sunshine, you can use Flood to correct your course. Same goes for the spin move in Galaxy and Cappy in Mario Odyssey. This allows players to still make jumps even if they weren't perfectly executed, which for a casual player will make the controls feel a lot better. Mario 64 really doesn't have a safety net like this. Sure, you can use the mid-air kick to somewhat change your course, but it pales in comparison to the methods mentioned above. If you make a jump in Mario 64, it has to be perfect, and if it's not, it's gonna get you killed. And that alone can be frustrating. But even with these downsides, I have a hard time calling the controls in Mario 64 bad. For the past decade, it has been the most popular speedrunning game in the world. And a large part of that is due to how it controls. It may have some quirks, but when it's in the hands of a master, you get stuff like this. So, it may be less that the controls are just bad, and more that they are just hard to master. But at the end of the day, they do have some frustrating quirks, so I'll call this criticism inconclusive for now. So the third and final criticism we'll look at is that the camera functions poorly. To do this, we'll take a look at 3 different scenarios, where the placement of the camera is crucial to the player's success. If the camera cooperates and helps the player, then we'll give it a point. If it makes the player's life difficult or gets in the way, we'll deduct a point. Okay, so let's get into the first scenario, crossing this bridge in Tall Mountain. Ideally, to cross this bridge in the easiest way possible, you would want to position the camera behind Mario and just hold up on the joystick. But you're unable to do that. No matter how you position the camera, it will never directly be behind Mario. So to compensate for this, you have to hold the joystick in a diagonal position that is much harder to hold than a position that is directly up, and can lead to the joystick slipping and cause Mario to go careening off the bridge. Next is this pole jumping section in Lethal Lava Land. This one kind of has the same issue as the first scenario, where ideally you would want to place the camera right behind Mario and line up the jump with the next pole. But again, you're unable to center the camera right behind Mario, so you have to settle for this off-centered view, which then causes you to have to guess at which angle to hold the joystick at. And then you have to jump and hope that you hit the pole, which can make it very easy to fall to your death. The final scenario is this ledge in Tiny Huge Island. Unlike the bridge in Tall Mountain, you can actually position the camera behind Mario for this ledge, which allows you to hold up on the joystick and cross this ledge with ease. That is, until the camera swings around on its own and changes the perspective of the controls. At the start of the ledge, holding up will go north, but if you keep holding up when the camera swings, it will cause you to go west. and will send you up the side of the mountain, which can cause you to slide down off the ledge. Now, I would say in each one of these scenarios, the camera got in the way of the player and made it difficult for the player to succeed. So I would have to deduct 3 points from the camera and call this criticism valid. And overall, I would have to say that the haters were right. Out of the 3 criticisms, 2 of them were valid and 1 was inconclusive. But even in spite of these flaws, I still think Mario 64 is a great game. But it is an old game, and it has its issues. I just hope I covered these issues in an unbiased and fair way, to try to give you a better understanding of why people hate Mario 64.